Hello guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can set up your context API folder structure. So this will enable you to be able to set your types, your reducer folder and your service folder. So service folder will be where we are going to be keeping every API call will be taken to the backend. So just see this video as an advancement of your project. Your project can still work without like context API or having Redux, but it just makes your life much easier. So let's move on to our code. So over here now, from here we have been using local storage, and then we've been using the local state to make everything work. So what we can now do to improve this is by making use of context API. So to achieve this, we just go to our code, and in the source folder, we're going to create our EPA folder here. So in the EPA folder, that's where we are going to be keeping all our context. So you can just have the context folder directly. You already know that React is unopinionated, and you can actually structure it anyhow you want. But sometimes you might have, let's say you might have any other EPA, and then you want to just put everything in the same folder, so you won't have a very long or large folder structure. So over here I'll just have the EPA folder, and in the EPA folder I can just pluralize this as EPAs, and then I can create the context folder. So I can have the context. It can be singular or plural, but I'll make it plural because we will have maybe context for user, context for to do, context for medication, context for teams, context for maybe like language as well. So it makes sense to just pluralize it. So moving on now, the way we want to structure this, just like what we've discussed, is that inside of the context folder now, we are going to create a specific folder for the particular entity we want to create. So for instance, now, since we are dealing with to do, we are just going to create a to do context folder. So we just have to do context. So inside of this to do context now, we're not going to be having our type file, we are going to be having our state file, reducer file, and then also have the context file. So that is where this is where we are going to create that. So we can have to do context dot js. Then we can have to do state dot js. We can also have we can just make this JSX because it's going to be returning components. And then so we have to do reducer dot tx. We have to do types. So this is where we are going to put all the types like actions there. So we have the JS, and then that should be all. So these are the four files that are needed. We need the to-do context, the to-do reducer, the to-do state, the to-do types. So we can also just copy and paste this, and then use it for maybe if you have user for user authentication, maybe you want to check log in a user, you can have the function here. You want to update the profile of the user, you can have it in this context. You want to maybe do any settings or anything that has to do with the user that has to do with API and stuff like that, so you can keep them here. So we also have can change this to now user context, change this to let's say to user state, then reducer, and then we have the to-do types, maybe to-do type as user logged in, user updates profile and stuff like that. So you can see, So in the context now, in our EPA, we have the context, and in the context, we have the to-do context, then the user context. So you can have as many contexts as you want. Maybe for the team, you want to have context for it. Maybe for language you want to have. So let's create one again for teams. So you just change this to team context, and then inside we just change this to team context. Then we have reducer, then user state, change to team state, then user type change to team type. So this is how it grows, and then it helps us a lot because we could easily just create a new folder from the existing ones. So that's basically it. So in this EPA as well, we could have our service, we could have our service folder. So basically, we want to separate our context from our API call, and the reason is because in future, if we want to scale our app, we don't want the context to be coupled with the service. So coupled means like we don't want to be making API calls in our context directly, because if we want to change our state management, we don't want to have much changes going on, or we should be blocked by having our content, our API calls, which is also services inside the context. So if the service is separate, we can just start working on a new state management, maybe like Redux or any other one that fits your project, and then you can easily just plug it directly into the service. So in this EPA folder now, what we can now do is we can create services folder. So, and in this services folder, we you can have a folder, or you can have a file. But since service is just like for a single entities, such as maybe like to do service, maybe like team service, maybe like user service. So I always prefer to go for file, because we don't want to have maybe like user one service. No, we just have one. So we can come here and do we can do for to do dot service dot js. So basically we are doing dot service just to know that this is an API call. So you could just do to do dot js, but it doesn't really make sense when we are looking at it. But when you do to do dot service dot js, you could just make it much easier that way. And just depends on preference. Doesn't mean like it will not work if you don't put service. So we can also have user service dot js, and also we can have team dot j service dot js. So that's basically the three services that we're going to be having. So in this to-do service, we could just put where we did our issues. So we just move this to be specific. Any specific API call to do's, we just move it there. Anyone that has to do with user, we move it to the service folder. So let me do a quick recap. So basically, we are setting up our context API folder structure. And what we did was to create an EPAS folder. So in this EPA folders, we are going to be having our context and service. So our context is our state management, while the service is where we are going to keep all our API calls. And the reason we are separating these two is because maybe when we want to migrate to another state management, we don't want our service to be coupled inside of the context API folder. And then if you want to change, that means like we'll be having to the service is not independent, and it is actually coupled in the context. And that means if you want to change to another one, it won't be easy, because it is written actually for that context. But if it is independent, it's on its own, we can just call it from anywhere, even in the UI and not the context. And then if you have another state management, it should be easier to just point to it rather than having it coupled in the context. So what I mean in essence is we could just delete this context folder and then put another one that that works well with what we have as a replacement for context. So that's basically it. So in the context now, context folder, we could have as many contexts as we want. So for example, I've shown you that we could have the theme context to manage. Maybe you want to toggle from dark to light mode, or you want to do anything that is theme related in your application. And also, we have the to-do context where we manage everything that has to do with our to-do, like CRUD operation. We could create, we could call out a type or action of, reading a to-do by ID, or reading all the to-dos, or updating a to-do, or deleting a to-do. So we are going to be doing that here. And for the user context, we could have like maybe login or sign up, or user update profile, or maybe like any actions that has to do with the user, both that has to do with API, or that has to do with like managing their state. So that's basically what we have in our context. And in our service folder, this is where we are going to be putting all our API calls. So maybe we want to do maybe like login API, login function, or sign up functions, or update profile. This is where we are going to be keeping those services, and then we can make reference to them from the context API or anywhere in our UI. That's why we don't want to couple it inside of one of the reasons we don't want to couple it inside of the context API folder. So that's basically it. So you can go ahead and create this EPA folder, and then create your context. Look at what you want to manage in your application, and then you can create context folder for them. And then this service is also very, very compulsory, because you want to ensure that you have a single folder for each of your services, so you can migrate any service that you have. You might already be doing something like this, but maybe you are not naming it properly, or you are not structuring it properly. So you might want to take a look and then update it accordingly. Yeah, so in the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to convert the to-do functionalities that we currently have with the local state, and then we can migrate it into global state using context API.